you and your brother on a divided inheritance. That's not what he's talking about. But this person jumps in. And so this is what I want. I want to drive home a very practical point right here. I want to drive this point home. We have a tendency to be so preoccupied with temporal matters, temporal problems, that we ignore, listen, spiritual truth. We can become so preoccupied over temporal matters that we ignore spiritual matters. This person doesn't really care to get into a discussion about hypocrisy, about the Pharisees. He doesn't care to get into a discussion about fearing God over fearing man. He doesn't really seem to care about, that even the very hair of your heads are all numbered. This is verse 7. Fear not, therefore, you are more value you are of more value than many sparrows. He doesn't care about this. He doesn't care about this idea about that confessing God before men, or God won't confess us before the Father. This man is not concerned about any of this. He's not concerned about being brought in front of the magistrates and about God providing about what to say. He doesn't care about any of those issues. He cares about one thing. There's an inheritance, and he wants his fair share. He wants his part. I love this because it's so real. Let me read it again. Luke chapter 12, verse 13. And one of the company said unto him, Master, speak to my brother that he divideth the inheritance with me. It just sounds real. It feels real. That's how it works in real life. You can be preaching a sermon, you've studied, you're teaching the Word of God, you're expounding the Word of God, and when the sermon is over, someone will say something to you, and you're like, what? Did you hear anything I just preached for an hour on? But the problem is, we are all the same. Temporal matters can blind us to spiritual truth. Being preoccupied with temporal matters can blind us and cause us to ignore spiritual truth. He was just given a gold mine of spiritual truth, but all he was concerned with was a temporal matter. What consumes you? Temporal matters or eternal truth? Temporal matters or spiritual principles? Let's see how Jesus responds. Jesus said unto him, verse 14 of Luke chapter 12, Man, who made me a judge or a divider over you? All right, now this is Jesus. Typically when Jesus asks a question, he doesn't ask a question in order to gain information. He asks a question trying to get that person who's answering the question to think. All right? That's the goal. Sometimes people misunderstand that principle of teaching or in discussion. I do it in my preaching. I do it a lot. I will ask a question. People sometimes think I'm trying to get an answer, and I'm like, I'm trying to ask the question for your benefit, not for my benefit. I don't need the information. I'm trying to ask the question to get you to think about the situation. It's amazing how often people miss this kind of teaching dialogue. I don't know why people miss it, but Jesus is not really concerned. Jesus is not trying to figure out. He's not trying to ask this question to get some information. He's trying to get this man to think about it. Wait, you're asking this guy that, and his perception, this man, this teacher. I don't know. Obviously, how he perceives him, I don't know. But what Jesus wants him to do is he wants him to stop and think about. Wait a minute. Why am I asking him to do this? Why am I asking him to do this? What authority do I think he has to go to my family member and say, hey, divide your inheritance? Why am I doing? He's trying to get this man to consider that. So, man, who made me a judge or divider over you? Verse 15, and he said unto them. Now, the man interrupts. So clearly everyone is there, right? Because this man interrupts, asks the question. He responds by asking this man a question. And then he said unto them. He takes the question and he's going to speak to the crowd and use it as a opportunity to teach a spiritual truth. In other words, this is what I love about what Jesus does. He's not going to allow the man to distract him from teaching spiritual truth with a temporal matter. This man wants to talk about temporal things, money, dividing inheritance. And Jesus is like, okay, I am not going to let you distract me from the spiritual matters. I am going to use your temporal matter problem to get to spiritual realities. Look what Jesus does. He says unto them, take heed and beware of covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. Wow. All right, now we could kind of break this down. Very simple. Take heed. Pay attention. Pay close attention. Now, this man is preoccupied with a temporal matter. Now, Jesus is like, no. Take heed. Pay close attention to something more important than your temporal matter. Take heed. Pay attention. That's the first thing. The second thing, beware of covetousness. Now, in verse 1, he told him to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. Beware of hypocrisy, right? Beware of this. Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. And then he goes in to say the way, beware of this negative influence of the Pharisees. And the way one of the things you're going to have to remember when you take a stand against the Pharisees is you're going to have to fear God and not fear men. All right. So he's trying to get them to look to something spiritual. They see a physical problem, Pharisees, religious leaders, people, and he's like, don't fear them, fear God. Have your focus on God, not on men. Now here, it's the same kind of problem. This person is preoccupied with another temporal matter, right? A temporal matter, which is money. And he says, no, take heed, pay attention. Beware of covetousness. Beware of an attitude in your life where you want what someone else has. You desire what other people have. You're so preoccupied with things and position and power and property and money. You covet it. You desire it. Beware of that. See, he's like, don't be preoccupied with the temporal. You need to take heed, pay attention, beware of covetousness as being a spiritual problem. And then he tries to change this man's perspective on life. And all of our mindsets. For a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. Life is more than what we possess. Life is more than what you own. Life is more than your house. Life is more than your car. Life is more than the things you own. There's something to life there's something more to life than physical possession, or can I say there's more to life than temporal realities or temporal matters. Life consists of something else. This man only sees the temporal. All right, there's a theme developing here. There is a theme developing here. And he spake a parable unto them, saying. All right, so he tells them, listen, basically he does three things in verse 15. He tells them to take heed, pay attention, beware of covetousness, and number 3, he gives them a new perspective on life. Life is, and I'll read it specifically from the King James, life consisteth not in the abundance of things which he possesseth. That's not what life consists of. Life does not consist of what you own, your position, your property. It consists of something more. You've got to get a different perspective on life. Your perspective is all messed up. So then he stops and he says, okay, let me tell you a parable. Let me give you an illustration. He gives them the principle, the teaching. Take heed, beware of covetousness. Life consists of more than what you possess. Now I'm going to give you a parable to illustrate this for you. And here's the parable. He spake a parable unto them, saying, the ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, what shall I do, because I have no room where to bestow my fruits? And he said, this will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater. And there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said unto him, thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall these things be which thou hast provided? So it is he that layeth up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Simple parable. Anyone can understand it. Here's a person had all kind. I mean, man, he had money, he had property, he had everything, and he ended up with too much. And he's like, where do I put all my stuff? I know what I'll do. I'll tear down all of my storage buildings, and I'll build new things, and I'll look at all the stuff I have, and I'm like, look, I've got enough to provide myself. I am secure. I'm financially secure. I'm financially stable. Look at all that I have done for myself. I am good. I'm going to sit back, eat, drink, and be merry. And he's like, you fool. You fool. This night your soul shall be required of thee. And then guess what? What's going to happen to all of this stuff? Who's going to get all of this stuff? So is he. So is he. What is he? You're a fool that layeth up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God. You are a fool that becomes preoccupied with physical matters and physical realities, and you ignore the spiritual. You have your priorities wrong. You have your priorities wrong. Oh, I'm going to do this, and then I'll get this position, and then I'll do this, and I'll do this, and I'll do that. And you're like, well, how is any of that going to impact your spiritual life? Are you storing up for yourself treasures in heaven? Are you rich towards God, or are you simply rich in a physical situation? Are you only concerned with your physical needs, your physical wants, your physical condition, your physical reality? You need to understand life is more than the physical. There is a spiritual element to it. There is an eternal God and an eternity. That's what you should be preoccupied with. Now, we're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. But I can give you clear illustrations of this. I talked about this Sunday night when we worked through this section. I think this is very important. All right, I think this is something to really consider. And I can only use illustrations that I'm aware of, but that I'm familiar with. I saw this so many times when I was in the military. Someone would be in a very good situation where they had a very good church, a good church family. They seemed to be growing in the Lord. They seemed to be studying. They were showing up at all the different Bible studies. They seemed really excited about the things of God. And then all of a sudden they would start focusing on my career. What do I need to advance my career? What do I need? Or not just what do I need to advance in my career? What I want. You know, I like living here, but man, I've always wanted to go here, or I've always wanted to go here. And I've been at this base now for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I think it's time to put in for a transfer because I need this for my career, right? Because if I don't go from base to base and I don't get certain medals and these things hurt my career, I need to put in to change, to put in to go to a different base. And they would make all the arguments that they're doing it because they needed to advance and rank, to provide for their family, because they were godly, right? All they cared about was providing for their family. And they would make all of these excuses. Now, they would put in for bases, end up at a base, and they never even bothered to consider the condition of the churches and the location they were trying to go, because that wasn't a priority. And then you would find out, well, we can't really find a good church here. And next thing you know, they're not really attending church. They're not really studying their Bible, and their spiritual life becomes an absolute train wreck. Hey, so glad you were preoccupied with the physical that you ignored the spiritual. So that time and time again. Or hey, I know what I need to do. I need to put in, there's a new job available in my squadron. And I really want to get that job. Now, if I get this job, it's gonna cause lots of, I'm not going to be able to attend church, and I'm not going to be able to do this. But I really need to do this to advance in rank and to help my career. They go do it. Next thing you know, they stop coming to church. Next thing you know, they drop out of church. Great decision, brilliant decision. Now, again, there's a